So I would take a very contrary stand to people who say that men do not allow women to progress or they don't make the right choices when it comes to hiring. Because I've also noticed that there are a lot of men who suddenly become a protective father or a brother kind of a figure, and they reject women candidates more out of a feeling of protection. I think in the context of International Women's Day, it's very, very relevant. Uh, I think in my side of the family, I think in maybe I'm the fourth generation that has been raised in a very gender neutral atmosphere. In a nutshell, my upbringing has been very, very futuristic, I would say. What we are talking about today of diversity and inclusion and scientific thinking and challenging status quo is something that I have already experienced almost 5 decades ago. So it has come a long way with me and it has made me what I am.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our yet another episode of Celebrating Self, where we talk to some inspiring women around us who are doing something really good. And why are we over here at Celebrating Self is the reason that we need to celebrate our own selves. We need to have a good relationship with our own selves so that we can actually grow both on the personal front as well as the professional front. It matters a lot. And today we have a really special person with us. She is Harini Sreenivasan, a business transformation evangelist, a design thinker, a neuroscience enthusiast, and behavioral scientist. She is adept in unlocking human potential in organizations and has spent over 24 years in the area of leveraging people's potential for business agility and excellence. She is a crusader for zero student suicides and strives to help create purposeful organizations. She shares her stories through keynotes and TEDx talks and is also looking forward to the release of her biography. And one more thing I would like to add on is that today will be her 100th live session. And I guess what a better way to celebrate this thing than talking about women for women, especially during this Women's Day week. Welcome, Harini. Welcome, and I'm really grateful to you that you accepted our invitation and you are here to share your story with all of us.
It's my pleasure, Karanjot, being here on this conversation with you. And of course, when it comes to accepting to share my story, anything that has a purpose behind it, anything that is meant for the good of the society, you can always count me in.
Wow, that is so sweet of you. And with this, I would request you to share your story. Like I just read out so much, and I'm sure there are many of the things that you might not have mentioned or I might have missed out. But just tell us, how did you become the lady that you are today?
Well, I've had a very interesting journey. That's something which I keep looking back on, trying to learn from my own past, trying to put myself to a better use every day, trying to be a better version of myself. And I think over a period of time, a lot of what I am has evolved from circumstances that I have been in. Uh, there's a big deal of what I am. Credit would go to my upbringing. There's a huge amount of there are lots of lessons there. I think that's why the point about my biography is of significance because there are many stories out there which may sound like stories that are common, like anybody would face in life, but there is a learning out of each one, and all that I'm trying to see is what is it that I have learned from my own life. So when I go back to my upbringing, I think in the context of International Women's Day, it's very, very relevant. Uh, I think in my side of the family, I think in maybe I'm the fourth generation that has been raised in a very gender neutral atmosphere. the fourth generation. So you can imagine my great grandmother
Wow.
was raised in a very gender neutral atmosphere, which is, uh, which was she was in the earlier century. I mean, my great grandmother, I'm close to 50, so you can guess what could have been her age now. So let's say 150 years, 200 years ago. Gender neutrality is something that flows in my family. So we've always been brought up without any discrimination in the way we take life decisions, in the way we do things, in the way expectations are set, so on and so forth. So there was never any discrimination. But at the same time, I also want to caution a lot of people is that when you're talking of gender neutrality, it is not as superficial as allowing children to cross dress, right? It's not that gender neutrality is not that. We were very very clear about what our sexual orientations are, but in terms of our approach towards life, in terms of decision making, there was gender neutrality. There was nothing that was forbidden for anyone to do because of gender. Now, having said that, it kind of set a way of thinking in my mind where uh, there are only possibilities. Gender doesn't come in the way of possibilities. So it was very easy for me to begin to explore into unknown areas. So if I look at my career graph, if I look at my career scape, it is I have actually ventured into an unknown area each time I made a career change. Um, and a lot of times, making career changes like that, sometimes it gets misconstrued as somebody who is unstable and is an explorer. But I think in my case, it was exploration for the purpose of learning something new, for the purpose of understanding a certain unknown area. So I think that kind of upbringing gave me the courage to explore into the unknown spaces, to find out new things, to get into a bit of an investigative kind of roles at each time, to do path breaking things. A lot of it gave me a lot of courage. So I would attribute uh, a great piece of what I am today to my upbringing. I also have a very interesting paradox in the way I was brought up. I belong to a very conservative, traditional, orthodox Tamilian family, but I was brought up with extreme levels of religious tolerance. So for me, and what used to happen in my house was religious tolerance to the extent that we were made aware of religions, but at the same time we were also taught how to be sensitive to every other religion and how to be inclusive. So it's an interesting blend of things, of being orthodox, being traditional, following a particular faith, but learning to be absolutely sensitive and respectful of all other faiths. So again, a lot of it goes into my upbringing as to how my value systems were defined. This made me behave in a very inclusive manner at the workplace. Coming from a family of teachers, educators, doctors, and engineers predominantly, I think a lot of focus was on building a scientific bent of mind. So, having a scientific bent of mind is not just restricted to academics and the study of science as a subject, but more than that, it's about challenging status quo, asking why when you see phenomena around you, when you're asked to do something, the ability to ask why with inquisitiveness, not by rebellion, but with inquisitiveness, to ask why and try and understand, was something that is again part of my upbringing, a scientific bent of mine. And I think that all these things of gender neutrality, religious tolerance, being inclusive, and scientific thinking have probably you see a lot of reflection of it in whatever I have been doing in my career, or in my personal life, or even when I'm having a conversation with you. I remember you telling me the last time when we spoke is you didn't feel like we were talking for the first time. So I think all of it reflects in that. And the very fact of being able to respect another human being for what she or he is, I think it all emanates from this. So in a nutshell, my upbringing has been very, very futuristic, I would say. what we are talking about today of diversity and inclusion and scientific thinking and challenging status quo is something that I have already experienced almost 5 decades ago. So it has come a long way with me and it has made me what I am. So I think this has been a pretty long answer to a short question. So we can continue our
No,
conversation.
actually, whatever you said, it is true. At some point, it is your upbringing that makes you take that step. Sometimes we are like skeptical, should we go, should we not go? At that time, when the way our attitude has grown through the years, that is what actually matters, and that is what affects our decisions. And
Yes.
I truly resonate with that. It is a fact. And I'm really, really like, I would say, wow to your family for having built that kind of an upbringing, especially at the time when it was at its hype, I would say. Like you must be thinking like other girls must be so jealous of you, like you are getting so much, and we are like just the opposite. So that is like a very important thing. Most of the families now are doing that, but still there is a long way that we as an Indian society we need to go.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So this International Women's Day, the theme is break the bias, general equality. And
Yes.
with this, I would like to know your thoughts on this break the bias. What is your take on that, or what are your feelings, your advice, or what is something that you are doing yourself, as in to be a member of this break the bias campaign?
Yeah. So the themes of International Women's Day year on year have often made me think a little beyond the theme, and I try to always get down to doing whatever I can in a practical manner. So this year's theme of break the bias has actually made me think and introspect a little more on how bias actually creeps into decision making. Let's restrict it to a small piece. Let's look at decision making or career related decision making for women. Let's look at it in that context, and let's dissect that situation a little bit, and let's see what is happening and what can be done differently and so on. So when it comes to career decisions that women have to make, on the one hand, when you're saying breaking the bias, yes, women have to learn to break the bias, break stereotypes, move ahead and explore and do things that they wish to do, and all of that. All said and done, yes. But let's look at it from the men's perspective as well, right? And very often, uh, I do hear women saying that, you know, there is male domination in this, and men do not allow women to grow, etc. So having been in the corporate side for a long time, I've also noticed one thing, that it may be too harsh on the men if we blame them for it. So what we can do for men to help in breaking the bias is something which would really be an actionable item for us. So if I take an empathetic view on a lot of my male friends, they believe that women should be empowered. They believe that women should have careers. That they believe that women should be in leadership, and they are ready to do all that they can. But what's very interesting is when it comes to hiring a woman for a particular position, while they believe that she can do it, there is also a protective instinct in most men that I've seen, right? So I would take a very contrary stand to people who say that men do not allow women to progress or they don't make the right choices when it comes to hiring. Because I've also noticed that there are a lot of men who suddenly become a protective father or a brother kind of a figure, and they reject women candidates more out of a feeling of protection rather than a feeling of them not being able to do it. Like, for example, they say that, okay, she is married and very soon she will start a family. So I don't think we should disturb her life and let's not hire her. So, but the intent with which they sometimes make such decisions may not be wrong. It's very, very protective of the female colleagues. But as an output, what happens is probably there is a loss of a career opportunity for a woman. So that's what it is. So I think women like us should take opportunities and go back and have these conversations with our male colleagues and friends and family members as well, saying when you have to make a choice, do not take a decision on behalf of the woman in the picture, right? Let her decide. All that you can do to help her make a right choice, which is good for her, is open up all the pros and cons of the particular position or the situation or the role that you want her to play, but let her take that choice. Do not decide on her behalf. If I think if we do that, a lot of the bias can be broken. So to me, breaking the bias is not at a very superficial level just by saying that women can do everything in all areas of life, in all professions, but it's also about letting the men know that it's important for them to open up and expose the pros and cons of various positions. And if there is a woman candidate in the picture, let her decide for herself. Don't have to be protective. I think that's what it means to me.
I'm so happy right now. Do you know why? Because even I was having this same theme for this Women's Day.
Hmm.
Most of the times, you said very correctly that it may be their protection, it may be a positive side for them, but the
Yes.
way we get it perceived is because it comes out like a decision. And
Yes.
this time, even
It
I
is
was
a
like, break
it
the
is a
bias
decision.
and be your own decision maker.
Yeah.
And the
It
way
is
you
a decision.
explained it,
Right. It
yeah,
is a
so it's
decision.
like
In fact, what happens is it's not only a perception, it actually has a consequence, right? When somebody else decides for the woman, even though the intent is fine and that of being protective, the consequence is not what we desire. So we end up, maybe losing opportunities, but not because men want to dominate, but even because men want to be protective. And I've noticed this a lot in father and daughter relationships, in brother and sister relationships, right? A lot of times women are not allowed to lift heavy weights around in the house because the father or the brother will come and say, no, 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 I'll do it, you can't do it, right? So a similar
you're
thing
right.
happens at the workplace. When you look at how the brain works, I think a similar thing happens at the workplace. The intent is not to put down a woman, the intent is to say that it's too much for you, let me do it, right?
But this is the reason why we don't have women at the higher levels, because when at the basic level we are not that free to do it. It becomes our nature. And sometimes people do say that females themselves accept it, and that's the reason they don't grow. But
Hmm.
my thinking is that the reason we accept is that it has been such a long time. Like, okay, don't do this. Okay, okay, okay has become so normal that at one point of time we are like, we don't know. So this is a thing that needs to change. And you told it very beautifully and very practically, I would say. And with this decision making in our heads, I would like to ask you, is there any formula that you think that can help us to be good decision makers, apart from all the behind things that we have had in our lives, or apart from all what is happening presently? What is there any formula, I would ask?
Right. So, very simple formula. In fact, there are two things which one needs to keep in mind for decision making. Uh, what is it now? Before I go to those two things, I'm just taking a step back and letting you look at it in perspective. What are those two things? So, what is it that actually becomes a barrier for us when it comes to decision making? Is the fear of judgment, the fear of failure, and the fear of consequence, right? So when I'm at a crossroad and I want to make a decision, I always will wonder what will be the consequence of my decision. And if it is a consequence that I'm not ready to face, I'm not ready to handle, then I fear that consequence. If it's a consequence which is easy for me to walk across, I'm ready to take that decision. Right? Invariably, we end up taking decisions looking at what the consequence will be, but natural. We also look at, if I have to try something new, if the decision making is to try something new, to enter into a space which is totally new for me, absolutely alien, I've never done it before, to experiment on something new, to come out with a novel idea, something of that sort, what stops me or prevents me from taking a quick decision to jump into it is fear of failure. What if I fail? What will the world think? What will other people feel that I didn't succeed? Right? So there is this fear of failure also that plays on our mind before we jump into doing something new. At the same time, there is also fear of judgment. Whether it is a fear of consequence or fear of failure, we always wonder about log kya kahenge, right?
And this is the biggest
So
question for women.
it's a question not only for women, I think it is true for anybody. When it comes to decision making, why is it that we are not able to sometimes go ahead? Why is it there's a mental block? Why are we stuck over there? Is precisely this: log kya kahenge, right? So instead of looking inward at all these, I mean, instead of looking outward at all these things, at the society, at what people will say, at judgmental, judging people, at your failures that are possible, at the consequences which you may not desire, I think it's always good to look at the positive side of things. What if it succeeds? It's a successful experiment. What if it is a consequence which I can easily manage? What if there is a consequence which will make a big difference to the society around me? What if people judge me, but they see me as somebody who is path breaking? Try to look at all those positive things and try and eliminate fear of judgment, fear of failure, and fear of consequence. I think that is the only way to move ahead. You pick up anything from our history books. You pick up anyone who has done anything path breaking and phenomenal, be it a surgeon, be it a soldier, be it anyone who has done something which no one has done before. Let me put it very simply. They only conquered these three fears: fear of judgment, fear of failure, and fear of consequence. Let's go ahead and do it. ज्यादा से ज्यादा क्या होगा? बात नहीं बनेगी. बट बात अगर नहीं बनी तो उसमें से सीख तो जरूर मिलनी है. So when you look at it that way, you're actually exercising positive psychology to yourself. And I think that is the simplest and the only way to go ahead and do it. This is a very simple thing that my brother actually taught me when I was a child. He said, you're getting into an unknown area, right? How do you eliminate the fear of failure is, अगर कोई चीज अननोन है, आपकी पहचान की नहीं है, आप नहीं जानते हो उस रास्ते में क्या आने वाला है, अगर उस रास्ते में यू फेल, nobody will blame you, no? It was an unknown path. मैंने कब कहा कि I'm an expert there? So it doesn't matter if I fail. So when you look at it
Right.
that way, the fear of failure actually goes away. At the same time, if it's an unknown path you're taking and you succeed in that experiment, imagine the double bonanza you get in success. It was an unknown thing. I've never done it before, but I've succeeded. And that gives you tremendous amount of motivation to do more path breaking things. So I think my simplest mantra is this: enter into unknown areas, explore into the unknown areas by eliminating these three fears. Because at the most, what will happen? You will fail. And you'll fail in what? In an area that you did not know. So nobody's going to blame you for it. So I think that's what it is. It's as simple as that. By the way,
Wow, and this is so strong.
I see a good friend of
Sorry?
mine, Kavindra, actually watching us, and there are some interesting comments he's putting up. So I just wanted to say hi to Kavindra. Yes, Karanjot, we can proceed. We can continue.
Yes. Hello, sir. Even I am connected to him, and it is always a pleasure to see his comments, his insights on whatever talks we have. And the way you told about this good decision making, this is so strong. In fact, it is something, if we adapt this thing, I think it will also boost up our self confidence. It will help us to
Absolutely.
understand that it's okay. Why not? Just go for
Absolutely.
it. And
Absolutely.
I just loved it. And with this, another important aspect that we have in our lives is about assertiveness. So now I would simply directly ask you, now what is your advice for a woman to, like, to hold on to her assertiveness? Should she be, or how can she be?
See, for anyone for that matter, and I specifically, I prefer to be gender agnostic, even though we are speaking in the context of International Women's Day, and maybe the focus is on women, but I would still prefer to remain gender agnostic for the simple reason is that all these are behaviors, right? So when a woman exhibits a behavior that we attribute it to certain societal reasons and societal norms and all of that. But in general, if you look at assertiveness, okay, we'll bring it into the women context a little later. But in general, if you look at assertiveness, should one be assertive or no? Right? There's nothing wrong in being assertive as long as your intent is for the larger good, right? You are being assertive about a positive difference that you want to make. And there is a lot of resistance, but you're still taking your stand, you're being assertive. It's very good because your intent is to make a positive difference to the society around you. Or society, in the sense, I mean, it could be a very small situation, it could be the country in general, whatever, right? You can be you, and you have to be assertive because your intent is to do something good. But just being persistent and not having enough supporting information to convince the other person would move this assertion to being adamant. Now, that may not go well with the other person because if you're adamant on something and you're not getting into a conversation where you're not able to convince the other person about why you're taking that stand, then it is no longer assertiveness. It starts reflecting as adamancy to the other person. Now, when you're being adamant, you're slowly slipping into a child ego state behavior, transactional analysis theory, right? So, when you slip into a child ego state behavior, the other person who's listening to you automatically gets pushed into behaving like in a parent ego state. That's what transactional analysis theory says. It's a behavioral theory. So when the person moves into a parent ego state, he or she will start dictating terms, will start uh, controlling you, so on and so forth. So your assertiveness, which is now being perceived as adamancy, does not end in a constructive outcome. But at the same time, if you remain assertive and by playing yourself in an adult ego state, if you're able to back up your assertiveness with a lot of convincing arguments as to why are you saying that, what is going to be the change that will happen when you do what you're asking to do, how are you going to implement it, how are you going to deal with the consequences, how are you going to take accountability and ownership of whatever you're doing. Now when you keep saying that, your assertiveness becomes a lot more convincing and clear to the recipient. The recipient also behaves in an adult state of mind and lets you do what you want to experiment. A lot of, now I want to bring it to the women context. Now I'm talking general, so people shouldn't get me wrong. I'm not saying all women are like that, but many a time, because of the male female power distance which is part of our culture, right? A lot of women tend to be less assertive and they prefer to be submissive, saying that we'll compromise because we need peace, right? A lot of us do it. I also do it at times. I'm not saying that I don't, but look at what is it going to cost you as a whole. Okay, maybe as a family, maybe as a team in the workplace or whatever. If your assertiveness is going to result in a positive outcome, I think we need to break our shackles and learn to be assertive. If our assertiveness is going to result in more chaos and confusion, then it is okay to lie low for a while and watch what's happening and then highlight points where things could have been better if you had heard me out without blame game, without finger pointing. If you're able to be assertive enough, leave the person with all your thoughts, talk about the consequences, and still if the person is not ready to take what you're saying as a stand, let things go and highlight at the appropriate time as to what you could have done differently. I think it's all about a lot of give and take. It's all about a lot of sharing of ideas and insights towards an outcome which is constructive and meaningful for the society, right? So the society, the team, the family, whatever. But being assertive just for the sake of assertiveness may not help. May not help anybody, any gender for that matter.
Right. Absolutely. Very well said, in fact, that it is assertiveness has to be within the limits as per the situation and in a very analyzed way. So, this is something that I have heard after a very, very long time, which in fact our mothers also tell us the same, no? I'm remembering my mom right now, and being I have like we did not have any sort of gender inequality like me and my brother, all right, but there were certain cases where I would be like, no mama, why not me? So this was the teaching that she gave me. Just wait, watch it out. If it does not work, then you can do it that way. So it is better to, like I say, that we women are blessed. We are blessed in a way that we are very strong emotionally and mentally, and we can very easily analyze and decide as to what and how to do. And that's the way, I think this is my takeaway today. Like, that is how you can plan your assertiveness. You can plan out your way out in a way that nobody else is hurt, right? So with this,
Yes.
I would come on to the last question, and that is, I would like to hear from you one habit that you would like every woman to adapt. And
Mhm.
that habit, so that she can like nurture her self belief, she can nurture her relationship with herself, because everything that we talked about, it is not playing on just the outside. It is actually first on the inside. When we'll be like free over here, in sync with everything, then only we'll be able to go ahead. So, what is your suggestion on this?
Okay, this is a very pertinent question, especially in the space of mental health awareness and the work that I do in that space. A lot of it comes from my own practical experience with life. There are situations which even now put me down to an all-time low, but I come back with a lot of resilience, and I bounce back. And generally, people wouldn't even notice that I'm going through an all-time low. uh, Now, how does one build that resilience? That resilience is extremely important. I think there's one habit which I learned the hard way, but I'm more than happy to share that with everybody on how do you develop that habit of building your self-esteem, lifting yourself up each time you feel completely low, uh, facing up to life every day, no matter what it throws at you. The very simple habit is, I think, it's consciously you have to make an effort to tell yourself that life is a consequence of the choices you make. So there is no room for complaint, right? So if there is something that is happening with me and I'm not liking it, it is depressing me a lot. I think it's very important for me to first acknowledge that I am in this situation because of a choice I made. Okay, it's either a choice I made or a chance I took. It's either of the two. But then I'm accountable in a big way for the position that I'm in today. The moment I keep telling that to myself, I think the feeling of self pity, it starts diminishing. And self pity is a very big demon. It's a huge way of escaping from the reality, where you get into a comfort zone of pitying yourself, and over a period of time this demon, it just consumes you completely. And when self pity becomes larger than you, it completely saps you of your energy and strength to do anything. So it's very important for anyone to be able to come away from self pity, and the only way to do that is to look at life in its face and say, yes, you are a consequence of the choices that I made and the chances that I took. um, Actually, the original is life is a consequence of the choices that you made, but then somebody was arguing with me that it was not a choice. It was by chance. I was pushed into it, and now it's a consequence. And I don't agree with you. So I said, yeah, but you took that chance, right? The chance was in front of you. You took that chance. So in a way, it is life is a consequence of the choices that we make and the chances that we take. And so there's absolutely no room for complaint. Now, this is easier said than done. Okay, it's not easy. So anybody can say that हाँ ठीक है आपने तो बहुत ज्ञान दे दिया ये बाद में life हमारी जैसी होगी तो पता चलेगा. So for all those people who believe that this is easier said than done, there is a way to practice it. I have done it that way. I practiced it. I also felt ये बोलने वाले बोल सकते हैं. People who are already very successful can say that, and how do we do it? And I did it the hard way, so I want to share that as well. So the best way to do that is to develop a habit of conscious introspection. Pick out 15 minutes in your day. It could be whatever time is convenient, but 15 minutes of conscious introspection. Sit back, close your eyes, and think about what went well during the day or the previous day, what did not go well, and what are you going to do to make your life different. I think it's very, very important for us to consciously be able to differentiate between what went well, what did not go well, and what is it that I did for these two things to happen the way they happened. The moment we start consciously looking at what is it that I did, it completely separates us from looking at destiny, fate, and all of that. It actually gives the control in our hands, the steering wheel in our hands, right? If we let things be as it is without looking at it in retrospective, then it becomes very easy for us to blame fate when things go wrong.
Harini is back again.
Yes, I am.
Oh wow. That is so sweet of her. Like after even this this network glitches that we have, still you could
Yeah.
make it up and you could come back. So thank
Sometimes
you so
life
much
life
for
throws life throws lemons at you, so you have to learn to make nimbu pani out of it.
I hope I made a good lemonade, huh? Dr. Rashmi Kavindraman.
If
Anyways, I was
life
about to
throws
just
too
wind it.
many, I was saying if life throws too many lemons at you, start making nimbu ka achar. If there are even more lemons, you start be ready to throw a tequila party.
Oh wow. This is so sweet of you. In fact, I was just about to wind it up, and I wanted to tell everybody that introspection is actually a power.
Yes,
Even
it is.
I had my time. I took my time to come onto that stage where I found introspection as an important therapy, I would say, which has helped me grow, literally bloom out. So this is something that we all of us need to do. And with
Absolutely.
this, before your network again gives us some another cliche, I would jump off to the most important, the most happening section, and that is the rapid fire round. So are
I
you
came back
ready?
just for that, I guess. Yes. Shoot.
Okay, thank you so much. So your first question is, what is your favorite pastime?
My favorite pastime is actually observing people and their behavior. So I like to watch behavior, and I try to go back and see why they are exhibiting that behavior rather than becoming judgmental. So that's something that I love doing.
Wow. So even in your pastime, you are like a scientist there, huh?
Oh, yes. Yes.
So So my next question is, when are you most productive? Like which part of the day? Morning, afternoon, night? Which part of the day you are the most productive?
This is a very tough question because I have committed myself for a lot of social causes. So I am productive pretty much 24 by 7. But if you genuinely want an answer, I think I am most productive very early in the morning, 4 a.m. to 6:30 a.m. Reason is very simple. The rest of the family is usually asleep. The doorbell never rings at that time. and there is silence outside. So that's the time I'm most productive, but I utilize that time out in the nature actually.
Wow, that is so soothing to tell you actually. In fact, it is said that that part of the day is considered to be a very pious time, right? And
Yes.
that is
Yes.
something that gives us the power and it energizes us.
Yes.
So that's
Absolutely.
great. And
Absolutely.
behind everything, like so brilliance, I would say, who is the inspiration behind it? Who's your inspiration?
Well, I have many. I can count a bunch of people from whom I draw a lot of inspiration. But there are two people who I generally refer to, or I kind of mirror them. One is my grandmother, my paternal grandmother. I grew up under her care and guidance, so she's been a guiding spirit to all of us. A very elevated human being, very rare to find these days. She was like a saint. So she's definitely an inspiration because she taught me a couple of things. Resilience is what I picked up from her because that was something I saw in person. Another inspiration of mine is a person from history. He's Mahakavi Subramanya Bharati. Mahakavi was a freedom fighter poet from Tamil Nadu, and a lot of people in our history book do not cover him. He lived only up to the age of 34, if I'm not wrong, but there is so much of powerful philosophy in his poetry, fiery poetry, I would say. He talks about women empowerment in those days, and he practiced women empowerment in his Orthodox household. He lived diversity and inclusion. So I think Mahakavi is somebody, I have his picture right above my desk, and that's definitely my source of inspiration. And the second one is a living god which I have seen, which is my grandmother. She actually lived a reclusive life. She lived like a sannyasin, and yeah, and she's been my guiding spirit, I think, even now. So yeah, there are these two people who I draw inspiration from. They've even helped me tackle the toughest corporate problems. I don't have to go to a mentor for it. I just need to think about them, and the solution just voila opens up.
Wow, that's so sweet, no? And with this, the next question is, what do you hate the most?
I hate lethargy. I hate not taking ownership of whatever you're doing. Uh, and to a great extent, I hate double standards. That is, saying something, doing something else. Have your thoughts, words, and actions not being in synchronization is something I absolutely hate. Absolutely hate lethargy. I cannot stand anybody uh, who does not invest his or her time into doing something meaningful. May not be productive, but something meaningful, definitely. So yeah, lethargy,
I
not
think
taking
I guessed it
yeah.
right. I had this notion that you would be replying something related to that because the way you have been, it is like this is something much obvious. And last but not the least question, describe yourself as a woman in 3 words.
Ah, okay. Sensitive problem solver. So that's how I would describe myself. I'm
Wow.
sensitive to what's happening around me. I'm sensitive to myself. I am sensitive to the consequence that will get caused by whatever I'm doing, and I don't play victim. So problem solving is something that I do. So if you can take problem solver as 2 words, then it is I'm a sensitive problem solver. So I don't solve problems without by being insensitive. So that's what I am, sensitive problem solver.
And the third one?
Oh, okay. You're saying problem solver is 1 word. Okay, then a sensitive problem solver with accountability, right? So I own up my
Okay.
decisions, absolutely accountable for what I do and even for what I don't do.
Okay. Well, that was so sweet. And something I am very good about. I'm literally feeling like it was such a beautiful session, such a beautiful time spent with you. through your loving smile and such beautiful insights about the topics that I would say very practical experiences that you have shared. And I literally loved each part of that. Thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you so much for sharing your stories, your learnings, and your experiences so that other women, we can also see inspiration in you and learn whatever things are needed for us. So, thank you
Thank
so
you so
much
much.
for being here with
It
us at
was
Celebrating Self.
Yeah, likewise. The pleasure was absolutely mine, Karanjot. And anything that, like I said, if it is if the cause is a meaningful one, I'm happy to be part of it. If it is making a positive difference to anybody who is watching this or will be watching the recording later, more than happy to help for anything in way forward. So, yeah, together, let's make this world a beautiful place. It is meant to be a beautiful place. So let's do that.
Indeed,
Thank you
indeed.
once again.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for our viewers for joining us. We'll see you again in another live session somewhere. Till then, take care of yourself and don't forget to celebrate yourself and just live your life in a meaningful way. Bye.
Bye.